All right, so back recording again, back live on Zoom. Thank you all. I think we've got pretty much the same group as last week, which is really nice. And I just want to start by welcoming you all. And I want to acknowledge, it's something we do in Australia sometimes. I want to acknowledge that I'm recording on the traditional lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung people, and to pay my respects to their elders past, the present and emerging, and to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people either on the call today or watching on catch up. Alrighty, well, today I wanted to start again with a guided session. And as we did last week, through that guided session, we'll explore a few more probably conceptual things, but we'll do it kind of through that guided practice. And so as we're looking at even those conceptual things, I want to encourage people to be listening, but also keep some awareness on your body and on your breath and on just allowing everything to be as it is. And so as we're going to do a practice today that kind of mimics the process that we go through when we learn to practice mindfulness. And we're going to end up in the kind of space that I see as the not the end point or the goal, but as the kind of probably purest form of the practice, or where we want to get our practice to, if that makes sense, or it will once we start diving into it. So again, this week, you'll probably find it easier to close your eyes. And if not, find somewhere you can look where you're not going to get distracted by what's on the screen. And everyone is on mute, so if there's background noise, it really doesn't matter. And if anyone wants to, turn off their video for some of it, that's totally fine as well, for your own practice reasons, or if you're short on data or things like that, that's totally cool as well. And otherwise, we'll just make a start. So if you either close your eyes or find somewhere to look where you won't get distracted. And we'll start once again by just bringing attention to the breath and just noticing what it feels like to breathe in and to breathe out. Really shifting our attention from thinking, being lost in thought, to noticing and directly experiencing. What does it feel like as the air comes in through your mouth or nose? How do your shoulders move? How does your body move? And again, we're just experiencing that directly. And I'm going to say a few things about this practice. And I invite you to keep feeling your breath as you listen. And don't try to understand or analyze the words. Just let them wash over you. When we come to these practices, everyone comes because they're lost in thought. We don't know that that's why we're coming. We think we're coming because we're unhappy or we're suffering. But actually we're unhappy or we're suffering because we're lost in thought. Because our attention is absorbed in stressful thoughts about the past and stressful thoughts about the future. And because we're missing out on what's happening here and now. I sometimes call this phase of our lives or our practice unconscious insanity, because there's a kind of madness to believing our thoughts and doing what they say. We're caught up in imagination, and yet we're completely unaware that this is what's happening. And when we begin our practice, we move into what we're doing now, this second phase, if you will, that we might call noticing, paying attention. We might call it from thinking to experiencing. We're feeling the breath. And we can also take some time now to notice what's happening in the body. What sensations are arising now? What does that feel like in the body? And again, whatever is arising within you, see if you can just feel it without getting lost in some story about it, about why it's there, about what should be there instead, about what you need to do about it. We're not interested in that. We're only interested in directly experiencing what's happening now. And you can also notice other physical sensations right now. Notice the feel of your clothes against your skin. Notice the feel of your body against the chair. Notice the air temperature. Keep feeling the breath coming and going in the background. You can take some time to listen. And to really notice what we can hear, what sounds are arising now. And we can also watch the thoughts that are coming and going in the mind. So if you stay connected to breath, to body awareness, can watch as thoughts come and go. Without getting caught up in them, without getting lost. And whenever you do get lost, which will happen as well, just gently bring your attention back to this breath, this moment, and to directly experiencing what's happening now. Moving from thinking to noticing. Already in this practice, we've gone from unconscious insanity, we could call it, to space of noticing. And sometimes I call this phase conscious insanity as well. Because when we move into this, we become more aware of how often we're getting lost, how often we're believing stressful thoughts, stories. And when people start these practices, it often seems like things have got worse at this stage. They haven't got worse, but we're becoming aware of what was already happening anyway. We're waking up to that. So people sometimes get frustrated at this stage because it seems like they're going backwards, the mind's getting noisier. But really, we're just becoming more aware of the noise that was there all along. And as we continue to move through the phases of this practice, we move into this space of curiosity now. We start to really look inside and notice the nature of our experience. So if you look inside yourself now, close your eyes and direct your attention within, you'll notice some different elements to what you experience. We touched on this last week. You'll notice there are things happening, arising, thoughts, emotions, sounds, events, objects. We look into the world. There's a space in which all those things arise. And then there's the background awareness that we can't notice we can't look at, but that we can sense because it's what we look through. So in this phase, we start to become curious because we've started to see that we're not our thoughts. We're not the identity that's created through thinking and storytelling. We're not the emotion. So the question comes, well, what am I then? I've spent most of my life believing that when the voice in my head says I, that's who I am. And when we start to see that that's not who I am, it's just a thought, it's an I thought, it's still a thought, then often people start to get a little bit freaked out. And often it can feel as if your identity is dissolving, if it's being removed. And this was, in my own practice, this was one of the real crossroads, I suppose, was when I started to notice how much of what I thought I was or who I thought I was untrue. This almost fear of death or fear of annihilation started to rise. Something in me was worried of almost disappearing or becoming nothing. And so as we start to look within and become really curious about our experience and what's going on, it's pretty reasonable for this to arise. Not at all unexpected. So our next phase, we need to become really curious about what's happening and what we are in amongst that. We need to then become comfortable just resting in the space that's here. So as we sit now and as you feel the breath, you can notice space within into which the breath is coming. And out of which the breath seems to flow, or that sensation of breathing. So the sensation, it feels like it's arising in the body, but if we really watch, really look at it, notice that it's a sensation that's arising in this very space. So what sits around it, behind it, is this space. And sometimes thoughts are a really useful tool here, because if you watch a thought arising, it seems to arise out of this space, out of this kind of emptiness inside. And when the thought disappears again, seems to dissolve back into that. So as we sit and we breathe and we experience, see if you can just let your attention rest in that space. And if it's not quite clicking, that's okay. Just keep feeling the breath, feeling the body, noticing what's arising inside. I listened to people talking about space and talking about awareness for 4 or 5 years before I really noticed what they were talking about in my own experience. So just staying with the practice is fine. But if you can get a sense of what I'm describing, see if you can just let awareness rest in that space. And as the breath goes out each time, just let the body relax into that out breath. And in between breaths, we're just resting in the space. We watch thoughts coming out of that space, thoughts dissolving into that space. The source of all creativity, the source of all inspiration, everything that comes to us comes out of that and then dissolves back into it when its time is right. So our next phase is this resting in space. And then as we rest in the space, we naturally start to either ask or just notice who or what it is that's paying attention to the space. Who or what is there behind your eyes, looking out into that space. Or noticing breath and body. And I often describe it as being like a lighthouse. Picture a lighthouse on the cliff. And then the light that shines out and illuminates things is what we call attention. We direct attention towards particular things. But the source of that light, the source of that attention, I often call awareness. And we can notice that by just noticing the fact that there are things happening, there's a space in which they're happening, and that you're there watching them happen and watching the space. You're there as this awareness. And this phase of the practice I sometimes call just simply living as awareness. And it's not so much that we try to live as awareness, or we start to live as awareness, but that we notice that this awareness is our true identity. And so what seemed concerning or fearful, which was putting down the old identity, the false identity, when we find ourselves as this awareness, when we sense ourselves watching what happens, and sometimes that fear can be replaced by a sense of relief. As we start to put down the burden of story-based living. There's a sense of freedom and expansion in that. Because this awareness that you are has no past, no future, it's not lacking anything, it has no opinion about anything. When attention, when energy is filtered through this human experience, those things arise, that's okay. But when we sit as this awareness, aware of awareness itself, then none of that is relevant. And none of that needs to be taken care of. You can just leave it alone, even just for now. So in this phase, our attention is somewhat anchored in that awareness itself. So we're looking out from that awareness and we're noticing breath, noticing body, noticing sound and sensation. And at the same time, we're still noticing the awareness itself. We're still anchored in that, aware that we're looking from that. And we might still get lost in a thought. We might still get lost in a lot of thoughts. we can know that no thought defines who you are. No thought can speak to your experience. And that whatever arises out of the space is noticed by awareness, and that the awareness is what you are. This, to me, is true meditation. Is sitting and just experiencing the world, looking at the world as yourself, as that awareness, with a knowledge that that's what you are. And not a knowledge as in a thought-based knowledge, but a felt embodiment of that awareness. You know that you're looking at everything from that. And so in some ways the concentration that we did, the noticing, the curiosity, all of those helped us to find this awareness that we are, become consciously aware of it. Once we find that and where attention is somewhat anchored in it, we can keep doing those practices. We can keep watching the breath. We can keep looking within with that curiosity. Our effort is then directed at staying anchored in this awareness. And just allowing that, allowing the space to reveal whatever it is that we need to know. And so some things that seemed really important, like becoming a better person, like changing your life situation or improving your relationship. A lot of those things start to lose their urgency when we realize that our true identity is there in awareness. Because that awareness, there's no need for anything to be different. And what we're trying to improve when we do self-improvement is really trying to improve our self-image, our story self. So we can put that burden down as well. And now, what I would say is that this won't make you less interested in learning new things or changing the way you communicate or becoming physically healthier. It won't reduce your interest in any of those things, but doing those things becomes part of the game, part of the fun of life, instead of being a burden that we carry, something that we have to do. We have to improve in order to find happiness. Because in this awareness and in the awareness of faith, there's this deep peace and this deep sense of contentment, connection that is not dependent on anything external. And that sense of peace and contentment is there in everyone, regardless of how well we seem to be coping with this life thing, with this human thing. So we can put down the burden of trying to be perfect. That awareness that you are already is. We can put down the burden of trying to improve ourselves or become better at life. And we can just do that for fun. And so I want to finish up just before I open up the floor by just going back through those phases, because this isn't a linear progression. It's not a line from here to there where now we've discovered awareness. We don't go backwards, because when you come off this call or when you finish watching this video, something may happen that pulls you back into unconscious insanity, that pulls you into a suffering that seems to be caused by the outside world, that's actually caused by the belief in stressful thoughts. And sometimes when we're deep in that place, we need to come back and start by noticing again, noticing the body, noticing the breath, noticing the present moment. And then we can start to move into curiosity and looking at our experience. And then we notice the space, and we can rest in that. And we can come back to awareness. And so these phases that we go through are much more like a spiral, where as we move through each phase again and again, we're spiraling deeper into our own self, into our own experience. Because something else that a lot of people get discouraged at is when they've practiced for a while and then they find themselves getting lost in thoughts again, getting really identified with some story. Now, if we can recognize that as just a normal part of the process, that we're just traveling around this spiral and we don't know how many trips around it we'll make, and it doesn't matter. But if we know that we're in that phase of unconscious insanity, then suddenly there's something we can do about it. And that something is not telling stories about how terrible we are and beating ourselves up, but come back to noticing. And moving around our spiral from there. And so the other thing worth noting is that most people practice a lot more consistently when they're in this unconscious insanity and they're suffering. And then when we move through to this place of awareness, sometimes we kind of stop setting aside time to practice because things seem so lovely, it's like we don't need it. But if we set aside that space to just sit in this awareness and experience the stillness and the space, then our practice can really deepen. In ways that we can't quite imagine right now. So I want to invite your attention back into the group. I invite you to open your eyes if you had them closed. Turn your camera back on if you want to do that and rejoin. And again this week, I just like to thank you for joining me in that journey, and just invite your reflections. What did you notice as we moved through that? What resonated about talking through these phases? Was there something that didn't make sense? Something that really spoke to you? Or any aha moments that you might have had? And yeah, feel free to just take yourself off mute, anyone, and fire away.
Thanks, Ollie. I'll jump in first because I've actually got to go.
Oh, thanks, John.
You really reinforced that we are not our thoughts. So that came across loud and clear. So thanks for that, and keep up the good work. I just love what you're doing. It's fantastic, and we're all in this together, aren't we? Helping people, find that spaciousness and empty space that is also powerful. So yeah, we are not our thoughts, and thanks, mate. I really got to go. I'm going to another Zoom actually.
2020, definitely, isn't it? Thanks, John. Yeah. Thanks for coming along, mate.
Bye. See you later, ladies.
Yeah, bye, John. Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, I might get interrupted at any moment, so. But they've done very well. But I just feel really at peace throughout the focus, sitting for stillness like this. Call it what it is, meditation, but I'm doing it not in the most, an imperfect way, but that's life. Still sitting here and feeling really like thoughtless. There was just when you mentioned those words at those times, each time it just brings you back to where you are at that moment. And you notice that you are just in that moment, taking this breath, and there is nothing else. So, yeah. And even though I've had a couple of little interruptions with children coming along and sitting on my knee or something like that, they can see that I'm sitting here quietly. I'm not really changing what I do, but I'm still acknowledging they're there. And then my eyes are staying closed almost. and just, yeah. So, yeah, thank you. I'm finding I'm somehow managing to do this when I thought I wouldn't have been able to do it. Yeah. So it's working okay.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. It was lovely seeing some little people joining in their own way.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and I make us you notice what kids, like in their own way, they focus on things that we might think, oh, what are they doing that for? But they're doing that too. They're doing what they need in their own ways, I guess, as well, by just focusing on something. That's all they're doing. There's nothing else. It's good.
Yeah. I think it's easy to forget, especially with children, that so many of the things that developmental things that we go through are really natural, and that we just need to support that. And it's easy to think that almost we need to train children, or we need to teach them, or we need to be really active in those spaces. But sometimes if we just allow the space for them to blossom, then set the conditions. That's all that's needed. Hey.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, somebody else might want to say something, and I will just go back to mute in case anything else pops up. And thank you again, Ollie. I'll
Thanks,
see
Jen.
you soon, hopefully in person. Now we can start to
Yeah.
see very soon, I think, isn't it? Okay, good one.
All right. You gonna mute yourself? Yep.
Yes, we'll do. Bye.
See ya. Thanks, Jen.
Hi again. I just agree with what was said. It was a great reinforcement for me, and a very peaceful moment. So I enjoyed that. I feel more refreshed, really, than I did when I started. So that's really good. And it's like a really good reminder, like how your thoughts can just play havoc with how you feel, like big time. Yeah, like you can be kind of coasting along really well and feeling really, really great and peaceful, and all of a sudden you start feeling, really like in turmoil, and then you realise, oh, that's your thought. So the breath. So that kind of that really helps me.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Have a big impact.
Yeah. Good to recognise that.
Yeah, but it just take a long time to get to that stage of recognition, because probably like a lot of people, I just thought I was my thoughts. Never ever thought, looked at it being the awareness of their thoughts or anything like that. I was my thoughts.
Yeah.
Just
they're pretty convincing, aren't they?
Yeah. Thank you. It was really, really good.
Thanks, Lovelace.
You're doing a good job.
Oh, thanks.
I think, Ollie, you kind of clicked with me tonight when you said something about when things are going really well, we kind of forget to keep the practice going. And that's where I think I'm at more. When I'm really struggling with something, then I'm very, I make sure that my practice happens every day. I set an alarm if I have to. I do something to kind of, if I'm super stressed, or if I'm having a flare with my Meniere's or whatever, then I get very focused on making sure that mindfulness and meditation happens every day. But when things are going well, I forget. I let myself get pulled into, okay, I've done the work. I don't need to keep doing this. So it's nice to have that reminder that we have to just keep it going. Maybe those stressful times wouldn't come on. Maybe those Meniere's flares wouldn't come on so much if I would keep the practice going when it's good too. So, and my poodles are very interested in your little puppy barking. So they all came to the door like, what is that? Who's in our
backyard? That's funny. Yeah, she was loud, wasn't she? But I think that's a really good reminder. Sorry.
She wanted back on your lap.
I think someone came to the door, so that my partner took care of it, so that was nice. But I think it's a really good reminder because, think of a couple of friends. A friend of mine who's got multiple sclerosis and started practicing because of that, and another friend who has just chronic pain and practices every day. And sometimes for those of us who have intermittent, whether they be physical things or emotional things or both, sometimes it's harder to be consistent. And it's like those challenges, and we talked last week about how people's challenges kind of brought them to the practice in the first place. But those challenges can really help us to remember to come back to it. But then, yeah, if we can maintain some kind of consistency when things are going okay, then it just kind of, and those things might still happen in life, but we've kind of improved our balance for when, you know, the waves are a bit rougher or the earthquake comes or whatever it is. You know, we're a little bit more grounded and we don't have to scramble to re-find it. So yeah, I think that's a really good reminder. Thanks, Laura.
It's like the spiral, right? Like you're either spiraling up or you're spiraling down, but you're in that constant motion. And you know, I get reminded a lot. Yeah, as a counselor, I will tell kids, I'll tell adults, you know, where are you with the mindfulness? Where are you with taking time for yourself? And I will walk them through it. But in walking them through it, sometimes I forget to do it for myself. You know, it's different if you're the one walking somebody else through it. You still get benefit, but I think it's definitely, it's not the same. And you just can't focus, you know? And so it's kind of the idea of when you combine, you know, what Laura was saying and the spiral effect and the fact that if you're spiraling up, sometimes you forget. And then same thing that makes you spiral back down so that you can start spiraling back up. And so it's just that continuous, you know, I don't know. I'm looking at it as a tornado cone because, you know, we have those, but
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So, so yeah, that, you know, I think that it's useful as well to remember that we don't have to make that a really structured or rigid practice as well, that it could be listening to guided meditation from a teacher that you connect with, and that just sitting and, you know, having that on while you have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in the morning, you know, that's practice. Or, you know, what you listen to in the car is practice, or all those little things that, you know, we can build into our lives now because we have all this technology and all this access to free resources, that we, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to sit cross-legged for half an hour every morning. You know, it can be something that just kind of blends into your day. And sometimes I think that's even better if it's just a part of your day and then you continue with it, rather than, you know, seeing it like going to the gym or something where you do it and then you just forget about it and you go back to normal, go back to insanity or whatever. So yeah, I think that a reminder that when we say I need to practice every day, it can start to feel a bit heavy or a bit like a burden. And that it's about, you know, finding those practices that we really enjoy and connecting with them on a regular basis and having fun with that. Did you want to say something, Lebalise? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you're right with that, because like I've been through stages where like I have to practice every day and it becomes a stressor. And it becomes a stress trying to like juggle your life to kind of find time to practice. But where I can think, oh yeah, it'd be really kind of nice to listen to your voice and have a cup of tea and relax and kind of go through it. It works for me really well. I'm not saying it has to happen every day, but yeah.
No.
And
I
also,
think that,
sorry, I was going to say, because the mindfulness is with me all the time. It's good.
Yeah, and I think that the more normal it feels, like the more it's a normal part of your life,
exactly.
the less separate it is and the less you kind of step out of it, you know, when something's going on for you. So, yeah.
Or if I'm feeling a bit stressed, you know, like a bit uptight, then I'll kind of sit down and you're the one I usually listen to. Yeah, that really helps me.
Yeah. You going to say something, Jen?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just still listening as I can move around, but thank you. I enjoy listening to people's feedback. At the end of the session, everyone talking, thank you. That's helpful to me as well, to hear different people describe their experience, which really then I relate to, but I forgot about that myself. I hadn't been thinking of that, and then I connect it. So that's really good. Thank you. The other thing, Ollie, is anyone else has noticed through when you're talking through that session then, at the end of each sentence or words was a ringing, or was it on my side? Did anyone else notice that? A ringing at the end of your speech?
Doesn't looks like people are shaking their heads. So I don't.
I
No.
noticed it, Jennifer. There's a small amount of feedback from you, Ollie.
Yes.
Yeah,
that might
okay.
be what it is. Yeah. That's all I
All right.
could, I didn't know if it was something here on our side of it, or whether, Ollie, you wouldn't know it, would you? You wouldn't know it yourself.
No.
If you listen to it back, you'll hear what we mean. It's just I would have described it of a really fine, I've got the tinnitus in my ears, and I know I hear the ringing, a little bit of high pitched anyway, but it was like a little high rattle at the end of the speech.
Okay.
Yeah. Which
Yeah,
was
Laura,
okay.
you got me
So-
ears, and you got a little bit of something as well there, and the other two didn't hear it. So I'll have a listen back on the recording though and see, because it might be something in my headphones, or it might be something particular devices as well picking things up. But I'll see how it translates. So thanks, that's good to know. That's coming
Okay.
through at your end anyway.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Thanks again, guys, and I'll listen out or watch out for the next session. And like you said, Ollie,
Yes.
just a good reminder, at any time of the day or anywhere you are, just pop on something and not make that, as I hear others, it's not having to be a formal thing, otherwise it becomes a thing I don't do. So I might as well just pop it on wherever I am at any time I can.
Yep, that's it. Definitely.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye again.
All right. Thanks, Jen.
Bye.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm just going to end the recording there.